Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren, and I am the omnivorous bookworm. So today I wanted to talk about Dr. Thorne by Anthony Trollope because I have a lot of thoughts about it. Most of them are not good. So just to start off, to give a little bit of background of my experience with Anthony Trollope, this is the fourth full-length novel that I've read by him. I've read Miss Mackenzie, and I've read the first two books in the Barsetshire, so it's easy for me to say, Barsetshire series, and then this is the third one. So I've read four full-length novels by him, and then I've read the Christmas at Thompson Hall, and I have loved everything that he has written a lot. Like I don't know where he's been all my life. I mean, he's been at the library, but I haven't really heard about him, and I have an English degree. I'm like, why was nobody talking about him? I love him. But this book was such a disappointment. I was so disappointed in this book. Now, I still gave it 3 stars. So, I'm not saying it's horrible or awful, but just comparatively, to me personally, it's not even close. I mean, if you like this book, that's great. I'm really happy for you. But for me, I was just so disappointed, and I wasn't expecting to be this disappointed. So I think that probably played into it. So hopefully, if you watch this video, your expectations will be lower than mine, and then maybe you'll like it more than me. So that's my plan. So to start off with, so we have this man, Dr. Thorne, the titular character, and he's raising his niece, Mary Thorne, who is illegitimate. So, of course, this book was published in 1858, I think, in Victorian England. So very different time and place. People are much more concerned about this type of thing. Thankfully, that has changed. And so we have Dr. Thorne raising his niece, and she's illegitimate. It's sort of known, but not really known. There's rumblings about it. I'm not going to get into any spoilers in this book, even though I don't really think any of Anthony Trollope books are really plot-based. They're more character-based, but I'm not going to get into anything, spoilery. So he's raising Mary. They're living in this small country town, and the Gresham family is the rich people in charge in this area. And he is the doctor of this area. So Dr. Thorne is taking care of a lot of these Greshams, and there's other doctors as well that come into play. And so Lady Arabella, she's sort of our antagonist. She's at Gresham Hall. She is allowing Mary Thorne to be educated with her children. So Mary Thorne is being raised in a way, the same way as this rich family is, getting the same type of education, seeing herself as an equal, not understanding her background, but she doesn't have the privileges that this family has. She doesn't have the title that this family has. And although the Greshams have the title, they have this big house, they're very important. They're would this be considered landed gentry? I'm not sure, because I don't know about that, but they're super important in this town. But they are subsequently losing money as the book goes on. So there's a lot of issues about class versus money and things like that. Super interesting. All these themes sound very, very interesting. And that's why I was excited to read it. I had read going in that people said that it was a very sort of cliche plot, but I was fine with that because I don't really need a, surprising plot unless it's a mystery or something like that. But for an Anthony Trollope book, to me, it's all about the characters. So I wasn't concerned about that, but I was still super disappointed. The main reason I was disappointed is I really did not like Frank Gresham. So he's our love interest. He's this important guy. I liked him better as the book went on, but he was so annoying to me. We have this whole middle part of the book where we're just following him around, and I'm like, okay. I really don't care. I didn't like anybody in the Gresham family. All the girls were just kind of bleh. Lady Arabella's our antagonist. She was the most interesting character, but like, of course, she's the person you don't like, but I mean, at least she's interesting. So it was just, yeah, not my favorite. Mary Thorne also, she's just like milquetoast. She's just very bland, very plain. She just follows the sort of typical Victorian, like very moralistic, perfect girl. And I understand why Anthony Trollope did it, especially at this time. Having a character with her type of background, he's making her very, he's showing that like her background doesn't affect her character. She's very sweet. She's very loving, but it's just not interesting to follow somebody who's so perfect. Like, that's not fun. So the Greshams were not interesting. Mary was not interesting to me personally. There were other interesting characters like this Statchard, I think is what they are. Other family, there's another family. Of course, even Mrs. Statchard, she has a husband and a son. I won't get into their story because I don't want to go into any type of spoiler, but she's more interesting than Mary. Like, all these people were more interesting. Dr. Thorne, I loved Dr. Thorne. Like, and he's a titular character. So when the book first started, I was excited because I thought, oh, I really like Dr. Thorne. He's sort of kind of a little bit prickly. Like, he speaks up for himself. He's got spunk. At the begin, the way Anthony Trollope describes him at the beginning, I really liked it because he talks about how when Dr. Thorne will visit patients who don't have any type of serious illness, he kind of like teases them a little bit or like is kind of hard on them. But if they really are sick, like it really is something serious, then he's really kind and really sweet. And you see him raising his illegitimate niece that he doesn't have to. So you see him like all these like really sweet aspects of him, but he's he's interesting. He's more spunky. He kind of reminded me of Dr. Harding in The Warden and Barchester Towers, but with more spunk. Like, Dr. Harding's very like, so sweet, so kind. And Dr. Thorne is sweet and kind, but he's just got this like edge to him that I really enjoy in characters. But we hardly follow him. We hardly see him. I mean, we see him at the beginning. Obviously, we do follow him, but I'm just saying for the titular character, I thought we would be following him a lot more. And I feel like we were following Frank Gresham more. But that could also just be because I didn't enjoy that part of it, so it seemed longer. Like, it didn't add up how many pages. But anyway, that was my huge problem. Another problem that this book has for me is that it is so long, and it is so much longer than the other two books in the Barchester series. So I actually looked it up because I was like, if this is just me or how long is it? And obviously page length can vary, but I took the same Kindle version that I have. So if we look at The Warden, which is the first book in this series, is 204 pages, pretty short. If we look at Barchester Towers, which is the second book, very, very good. I really enjoyed that book, 542 pages. Dr. Thorne has 661 pages. It is over 100 pages longer than Barchester Towers, and it has a smaller cast of characters. Barchester Towers, we have all this sort of political machinations in the church. We have all these things happening, all these sort of side plots. All of the side plots are interesting, but in Dr. Thorne, we don't have any of the politics. We don't have any of the we don't have a large antagonist group like we do in Barchester Towers, where you have like the high church people and the low church people, and you have all these different groups within them. It's very interesting. You have the Proudies, you have all these different groups. In Dr. Thorne, it's just like mainly these two families, and one family I didn't like. So I guess if you like the Greshams or you find them interesting, is a better way to put it, because you don't have to like them, but you find them interesting, this book would be much better for you and work much better for you. Since I didn't like any of the Greshams at all, like, it was just such a disappointment. I was so disappointed, if you can't tell. And it's just, there's not enough side characters. There's not enough side plots happening. I guess with the side plot, you have this sort of side plot with Frank Gresham, but like I said, it's not interesting. He's very boring. And you know who Frank Gresham reminds me of? If you have read Barchester Towers, you might be angry at me for saying this, but he reminds me of kind of Bertie Stanhope. Obviously, he's not as like irresponsible. He's more mature, and I feel like he does get better. Frank gets better as the story goes on, but he just gave me that vibe of like Bertie Stanhope, who's, you know, just sort of this guy who's just kind of going around and wasting his life and using all his family's money. And Frank Gresham just seems very immature, very, I don't know. I didn't like him at all. Really didn't. Like I said, I did like him more as the story went on, but in the beginning, through the major chunk where we're following him, I really didn't like him. So I think that impacted how I felt about it. Okay, so there were lots of things that I did like about this book. I did give it 3 stars, so I mean, it's not like I hated it. We have Dr. Thorne. I love Dr. Thorne. If this book had been like predominantly following Dr. Thorne and we cut out like a lot of the Gresham family, I would have given this book easily, 4 to 5 stars, easily. Well, yeah. And then we look at alcoholism in the book. I really enjoy how Anthony Trollope looks at alcoholism. I think it was very advanced for that time and place. Obviously, you have to read it in its context. It wouldn't be appropriate now. But, he shows that it is a disease. He does sort of talk about it as a moral failing, but there's also this acknowledgement that they can't just stop drinking once they get to a certain point. And you really feel for Dr. Thorne because he's trying to treat these 2 particular patients who have alcoholism. And you can see that he understands a lot, but he doesn't have the tools to help them. And that's really upsetting for him as a doctor. And he doesn't know what to do. There's one particular scene where this person's staying at his house and they keep wanting to have alcohol. And he wants to be a good host. He knows this person is going to drink anyway, but he's also a doctor and he knows it's bad for them. And he ends up like giving them alcohol and then feeling guilty about it. And I just think that was a really honest way of showing how these conditions and how these interactions are much more complicated than it might seem on the face value. And like I said, for the time and the place, I think Anthony Trollope does a really, really great job of handling it. I have never seen any other Victorian author or book deal with it in such a kind and thoughtful way. So the other thing, let's see, it's written by Anthony Trollope. So I love Anthony Trollope. He's funny. I love when he sort of inserts himself in the story and he has this authorial voice where he's like talking to you as the reader, but then he's also pretending that the story he's telling you is true. I love that with Anthony Trollope. I think it's so cute and so sweet whenever he does it. I love it. I love it so much. And he does it less in this book, I feel like, than Barchester Towers, which also might have played into why I didn't enjoy it as much. And then there's just so many interesting themes that this book explores that I kind of knew that going in. So I think I had maybe my expectations a little bit too high, but we have this sort of theme of what are you? Are you, how you're born? Is it how you're raised? How much a part of you is just naturally in you, what we would call your DNA, but they, obviously didn't know about that at this time, but sort of exploring that in different ways through different storylines. We're looking at class differences in the country, which I always find very interesting because obviously it's different than the city. And since there are fewer families, like the class distinctions sometimes are not as stark because you'll have like, who else are you going to have to your parties, right? If you're living in the country. So I think that's very interesting. You have these like old families that are, living on the wealth and aristocracy of the past. I don't know the aristocracy. I don't know what it's called, but their family name of the past, even if their money is gone. I find that very fascinating. I love those types of themes. We're looking at money versus class, like what makes somebody, like even if somebody has a title and they have money as one character does, but they're not raised, they're not educated in a certain way, are they still this upper class, but they're not acting that way? Is very interesting. We're talking about marriage and money. I love how Anthony Trollope talks about money. I read Miss Mackenzie. I really enjoyed that part of the book where he talks about how much money she's making, how much things cost. I love that. I love looking up like, okay, how much would that be in British pounds today? And like, how much money is that? Like, how much are they really talking about? I really enjoy that. We're talking about education versus birth and kind of what I discussed earlier. Also, I really think it's interesting that since the Greshams don't have money, in a lot of books, we see women trying to marry into money. In this book, we see Frank Gresham, that he needs to marry money. And so it's a kind of an interesting, turning it on its head that the man is looking for a woman that has money. So all of those themes I really enjoyed, but unfortunately, didn't work for me. And I think what really didn't work for me was the ending. If he had done the ending differently, I would have probably given the book 4 stars, but the ending was just, I hated Mary Thorne at the end. I was just so mad at her. And I'm just like, why did you do that? Why did you accept that? No, don't be nice to these people. I was so mad. But then I started thinking, I'm like, well, I was so mad. Does that mean that it was a good book because it made me so angry? But I don't think so. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. I gave it 3 stars. I mean, that's a good. So the reason I gave it 3 stars. So if this had been written at a different time and place, I probably would have written it lower actually. But I understand that, at this time and place, Anthony Trollope would have been really, he's writing the book that for his audience of that day that they're expecting him to write. They're expecting a certain type of ending, a certain type of main character, a certain type of romance. And he sort of has to deliver those things. Part of me wonders, and you can let me know if you know more about Anthony Trollope than I do, because like I said, this is only the 4th book that I read by him. If the reason he wrote the book the way he did was to sort of make a point and to say, to be sort of subversive in how he was doing it, but still having to stay inside the confines of, commercial fiction at that time. So I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm overthinking it because I tend to do that. So that's why I rated it 3 stars, because to me, 3 stars is the book set out what it was trying to do, but it was nothing special. There was nothing about it. And of course it's special because it's Anthony Trollope and he writes really well. But then I had so many other problems with it. So I feel like it kind of averages, I feel like that's a fair rating for my experience with the book. Again, I hope other people enjoyed this book more than I do. So do I recommend it? If you haven't read anything by Anthony Trollope before, I definitely would not start with this book. Read something else. I really enjoyed Miss Mackenzie. I thought The Warden was good. I know other people were not as happy with it. I really, really enjoyed Barchester Towers. He has a lot of great short stories. Any of those I would start off with. If you're reading the Barchester series and you come up to this book doesn't have any of the characters in any real way that the Warden and Barchester Towers does. They're kind of minor characters, not even minor characters, they're cameos. So if you're reading the Barchester series and you don't want to read this book, you don't have to read this book. The series is a series, but I mean, even Barchester Towers, people say you have to read The Warden first, and I definitely think it helps you, but you don't have to. I mean, like I said, it's not like a fantasy, what would be 6 books, sextet or something, but it's not where you're like, I don't know what's happening. You'll know what's happening. So you don't have to read this book. It's not a horrible book. If you want to read the book, go ahead. But I definitely wouldn't recommend it if it's your introduction to Anthony Trollope, because he has so many books. And even with the few that I've read, this is my least favorite of everything that he's written. So let me know have you read Dr. Thorne. Let me know what you thought about it. What's your favorite Anthony Trollope book? What book should I read next of Anthony Trollope? I want to finish the Barsetshire series, but I'm starting to think maybe I should read a standalone before I finish the rest of the series. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. So let me know if you have any thoughts, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.